Welcome to episode 2 of Perception of Time, Tales of the Road. First, I want to thank everybody that tuned in, subscribed, and commented on episode 1. I really appreciate everyone's feedback and enjoyment of it. And I'd also like to thank my guest, Adam Neal, for being on. I had a lot of fun with him and it's encouraged me to keep going on. So let's move on to episode 2. I'd like to welcome my second guest, Keegan Kjeldsen, who you might know, who played guitar with me in Destroyer of Light for 12 years. I'm happy to have him on. He also had written a book called Ritual Madness of Rock and Roll, which is about our 2019 European tour, and he applies his philosophy into situations that we went through throughout the whole experience. It's a really fun and interesting read. You should check it out. You can buy it on Amazon. He also hosts his own podcast called the Nichi podcast. I found out about it when we were on tour because we had people that wanted to meet up with him, and it has a really big following. It's really cool. You should check it out. And next, he is the guitar player in Slumbering Sun, who has already released one album, and they have a second album on the way, which should be coming out soon. So here we go, episode 2. Cue the music. Everybody, welcome Keegan. Keegan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's start off with Slumbering Sun. You guys got a new record, right?
Yeah, well, we haven't really announced the date when it's going to come out or any of the details yet. I'm being a little tight-lipped about it until the single release. But I mean, I guess everyone knows because, like all bands, we posted our pictures and videos when we were in the studio, and we worked on this thing for about a year. It's the most time I've ever spent making an album. And I'm really happy with it. It's been kind of a painful process in some ways. So I'm glad that it's going to see the light of day soon. And then we're planning a tour of going out to the Western United States. So yeah, that band's been around for about 3 years now. And I think we're finally going to start building some momentum and really putting ourselves out there because we've been doing kind of shorter tours. We had just kind of a single release last year. It's hard being in a band with people who are in other touring bands. But we've just been making it work. So yeah. And then on top of that, what was the other thing? Doomed and Stoned, Asheville. That's the other big development with Slumbering Sun. Is we're going to go out east as well in July around that appearance. So should be good.
That's awesome. You guys got on Doomed and Stone?
Yeah, it's like the Asheville version of it. I think it's the first year, but Year of the Cobra is going to play and a bunch of really cool bands.
That's awesome, dude. Do you want to talk about the music for the new album? Is it like a continuation of the first album, or
we're gonna we're gonna throw you for a loop a little bit, but not really. I mean, this is what I'll say. When I listen to old '70s records of even bands, because I guess we're still in the doom metal genre. If you listen to like Black Sabbath Volume 4, which is the record everyone says is like the definitive doom record. I mean, that album has changes on it, like, and it has all sorts of up-tempo stuff. And I think about that a lot. Like a lot of the classic bands that are formative on, hard rock, heavy metal, it wasn't just kind of one note all the time. And so I think I can already imagine the reviews are going to say that we cover a lot of ground or, we're kind of changing things up. But really, we're just kind of writing whatever's appropriate to the song and willing to cover other territory and bring in other influences. Because personally, I like when there's a whole sort of journey or musical experience that you get listening to a record. So there's going to be some different stuff, but yeah, I think that's probably, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally understand. I mean, that's the way we went with Destroyer Alike too. Every time we got called Stoner Doom, we went left. You know, you like to expand your influences and stuff and kind of grow. I mean, that's part of being an artist.
Yeah, well, and it's just, you know, I I've heard a lot of I've been a fan of a lot of bands where you hear their new record and they're pretty much doing the same thing that they've been doing for like 20, 30 years. And there is something about that that I actually really respect. You know, some of the 80s thrash purists, or if you listen to like, you know, like High on Fire, you know, they kind of hit the same stride every time, you know. And there's like a commitment there, and there's a sort of like, you know, again, like being a purist about your genre. That's kind of cool. But you know, we were always kind of bringing in like different influences, and you know, I've talked about it before. A lot of the origin of the first record was me learning a bunch of like Celtic folk standards, and then thinking about one of the original plans was I want to do an album like covering some of these old like folk songs, but do them as doom songs. And then I kind of realized I'm like, why don't I just take kind of some of the tricks of the trade that I learned, you know, some of the melodies and some of the patterns that I've noticed, and kind of incorporate that. But anyway, you know, it's like you take something that is originally played on acoustic guitars and you slow it down, you put distortion on it, and then in a completely different context, you get like a completely different sort of sound or vibe to it that no one who like reviews the record or listens to it would ever pick up on usually. And then they'll pick up on something like James's vocals, you know, sounding like Lane Staley or something, and then compare the whole track to like Alice in Chains, which I love that comparison, right? But it's like not something I was thinking about. So it is kind of funny, like, you know, I guess that's just a roundabout way of saying like, bring in whatever influences you want. And a lot of the time, you know, they just kind of get woven into the tapestry of what you're doing. And then, you know, it transforms based on how, like the total vibe of everyone else that's contributing. And, you know, yeah, it takes on its own life, its own quality.
Yeah. All right. Now let's dab into some fun questions. Now, we kind of touched on this on our last tour and that tour video you put together, but what is one of your favorite tour memories?
Man, favorite tour memories. What comes to mind, and maybe it's just because I've been thinking about it recently, because, you know, trying to help a buddy who was looking to get booked up there. But I was thinking about how we played that show at the sushi bar Koto in Salem, Massachusetts. And it was on a tour with a band called God Hunter. That's Dave Rogers' band. Great band. We put out a split with them. And I guess it's been long enough. It's been basically 10 years. So, you know, to talk about stuff like this. But like his bandmates, Dave was always like kind of yelling at him. He was the tour dad. Dick, their bass player, was, you know, getting hammered all the time, messing things up. And he was kind of like having to hold their hand, you know, like they were like almost getting kicked out of the hotel because they decided to, you know, break up weed and try and smoke a joint in there and stuff like that. And I remember we played that show at St. Vitus in Brooklyn, and Dave was just pissed at his band after that show. Because there were all kinds of fuck ups. And then we played and we kind of fucked up on the first fucking St. Vitus show we played. And it was like that, you know, that was a big deal. It's like we're playing St. Vitus in Brooklyn, and it was like all filmed, and we all felt like it wasn't our best show.
Oh, yeah.
And then I remember the next day we go up to Salem, Massachusetts, and we're standing in front of the place. We're like looking for what is this place? And we walk in, we're like, oh, it's a fucking sushi bar. You know, there's people in there like, you know, dressed up in button-down shirts, like having a California roll, and we're like, what is this? There's no way this is the venue. And I remember you and me and Dave were standing in front of the venue that night, and we were already kind of bummed out from the show before, and Dave was saying, like, if they phone in this show, man, I'm gonna put him on a plane. I'm gonna put Dick on a plane, and I'm just gonna fly him home. and we'll just be done with the tour. And he's just like, you could tell he was like just expecting it to be the worst show because of what it was. But I remember on the Facebook page, they were like, first Stoner Doom show in Salem ever. And I was like, no way that's true. But at the show, people were like, yeah, no, that's true. And I remember it was like around the time when the doors opened, all the metalheads started showing up and packed that place out. And it was actually probably the highlight of the tour was in like a sushi restaurant, DIY style, or at least that's the show I remember from that tour. That was like really the highlight. And plus it was just cool because it was in Salem, there's all the old graveyards of the people who got executed for witchcraft and torture museums and all this kind of kitschy stuff around. So it was just kind of like a fun location. And I remember that being like the best kind of surprise where we were already kind of like feeling low and we were like, oh, this show's going to put the nail in the coffin for this tour. And it ended up being just totally awesome. And I'll tell that to people of like, it's another venue that I can list of like weird places that we played of, played like a Chinese restaurant. We played a sushi bar, played in bookstores. We've played in basements. We've played at that DIY spot that used to be like a doctor's office. We played Super Happy Funland, like any kind of like crazy place you can imagine. So yeah. And, sometimes it ends up being really cool.
Yeah. I mean, underground touring, it always is like the shows that you think are going to be the worst end up being the best. Like you walk in and you're like, what is this place? Like, this is weird. But then it ends up being the best show. And then you play an awesome venue, great sound. You're like, this place is fucking cool. This is going to be a great show. And then it ends up being a dud. And you're like, it just happens. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but.
Right. Well, some of the places that you play that have like a great sound system are like destination venues or, there's not really foot traffic there. And that's the thing, like, I've learned that over the years of, like, judging a venue by the sound system. Everyone wants to play in an awesome stage and an awesome sound system. It's so much fun. But you realize, it's like, that really has almost nothing to do with whether there's people there. I mean, I just booked us a show at Faust Tavern in San Antonio. Anyone who's listening and knows about Faust, like, you're playing basically on the floor of, like, a living room-sized place, but it's always packed full of people. Granted, you can't fit that many people into Faust, so it's easy to pack it. But it's like, it's like the worst sound imaginable. Like half the time you can't even find enough mics. But the experience of playing it's great, So it's like, yeah, you just learn that those, the things that you might think you would judge a venue by aren't always what you actually should judge it by.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how about you can choose which one you want to do. Worst tour memory or the most ridiculous?
Oh, wow.
What tour memory?
The worst or the most ridiculous? Man, that might take me a minute because there's been so many awful ones now. I'm just kidding.
There is a lot. There is a lot.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like in terms of, I mean, okay, maybe here, I'll give you the most ridiculous actually. It's actually a funny story. And first tour we ever went on. And that was when we were in Chicago and going to an after party. And so we park the van and we start walking and there's, we walk for like maybe 15, 20 minutes. And as we're walking, there gets to be like more and more smoke, kind of like it starts out as like a steady haze. But as we get closer and closer to the after party where we're going, finally we get to that street and we can see at the end of the street, like the glow behind like the skyline of like the buildings that there's like a major fire. We're making all these jokes about the Great Chicago Fire or whatever, but we get to the street and we're like, there's an actual fire here going on. Yeah. And, we've never been to this house before. Yeah, so we've never been to this house before. First thing that happens is a cab driver pulls up and he says, "Hey, do you live here?" And we're like, "No." And he says, "Well, somebody just threw a brick through your window." And we're like, "It's not our window, man. We don't live here." And while we're talking to him at the cab, the guy who lives there comes out. We've never met these people. We've never been to this place really. We're just waiting for is your buddy Myrick, right? He was going to meet us there. He's like, "Come to this after party. We'll drink and hang out." And So the guy who I guess lives in the house comes out, and he walks up to me and he's like, "What's all this smoke, man? What's going on?" And I go, "I don't know, man. I think there's a fire." But this guy says somebody threw a brick through your window. And he goes, "What? No, that didn't happen." And I'm looking at his eyes, and this dude's eyes are like black. Like he is tripping his balls off on something. I don't know what. And so I'm talking to him, and he's so fixated on the smoke that's all around, and he doesn't believe me that somebody threw a brick through his window. Finally, he's like, "Wait, so you're saying somebody threw a brick through my window, and there's all this smoke because there's a fire around?" And he goes, "Do you think it's all related?" I was like, "No, it's not all related." So then finally we go into his house, bunch of hippie kids hanging out, burning sage, smoking pot, whatever. We walk into his kitchen, and yeah, there's a brick right through the dude's window, shattered glass everywhere, sitting in his sink. And the dude goes over and he's like handling the glass, cuts his finger. I remember later in that night, he came out and he's like, he was all drunk and tripping or whatever. And he whips out like a samurai sword and unsheaths it. And he's like, "If anyone messes with us, I got this freaking samurai sword, dude. And it's sharp too." And he had already bandaged his hand from the first time he cut it with the glass. And then he cut his finger again. So anyway, we're at this party. So all this crazy stuff has happened. And I can't, that was when we had the breathalyzer on the Chevy Suburban. And that was the night I was supposed to drive. So I'm like, I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to get high as hell. We get on the highway, and I go through the wrong lane on the toll pass to get into the toll booth. And I just remember everyone in the van yelling at me drunkenly because everyone's hammered but me, trying to tell me how to back up with the trailer, which I've never done in my life before. Plus, I was like 23 years old or something on the first tour.
Yeah, you were a kid, man.
I didn't know jack shit about shit. And I remember everyone's giving me different directions and yelling. I like slammed into the concrete barrier. I like took out one of these metal posts. And finally I was like, I just can't do this. I can't. I'm too high. I'm too sketched out. There's no way I can do this. And Penny, drunk as shit, gets in the car. He goes, "Let me do it." We're all praying the breathalyzer doesn't go off. It's just like, how do we get ourselves in this situation? But he just backs out, goes up to the toll booth. I'm thinking, dude, when this person sees us, she's going to be like, "What did you do, dude? You just bashed into a bunch of stuff. You've been trying to back up your van for 3 to 4 minutes, messing it up." And of course, she's just sound asleep in the toll booth.
Yeah. No care in the world.
Right. Thankfully, it didn't go off, and we traded drivers, and I drove us to Gary, Indiana to stay the night. But that's when I think about stuff that happened all in one night in one sequence, and it was on the first tour I ever went on. I don't know if I've ever had anything else happen on tour where it was just one thing after the other of just a caper, kind of just something that would happen in a movie or TV show,
I'm actually glad you brought that one up because as soon as you said smoke in Chicago, my memory went to the guy on acid with the samurai sword.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It just automatically went there.
Oh, that was a great night. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it was fun.
And a good show, too. Good show.
Yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah.
Two-part question. What keeps you grounded when you're on tour? And do you find it different between Destroyer Light and Slumbering Sun, or is it pretty similar to what kind of keeps you grounded?
Yeah, I guess, well, for the first question, I mean, the main difference in touring, I guess, between the two bands is just, I have noticed there is a difference. The different combination of personalities can set a different vibe. And we've also seen it from the outside in with other bands we've toured with, where you can tell, that band is just on the partying wave. They're staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning every night. They want to rage everywhere they go. There's been times in the past where that was our vibe in Destroyer of Light, but I think definitely post-pandemic, once we were kind of old dudes, that kind of chilled out significantly. And that's kind of carried over into Slumbering Sun. And just the main thing that's different is you get a different combination of personalities and kind of a different tour. A lot of the time is kind of balancing everyone's needs with their different neuroses. Excuse me. they're basically figuring out what everybody's kind of like thing that rubs them the wrong way that you avoid, figuring out what it is that somebody needs. So like pretty much in both bands, at a certain point in the morning, like everybody's got to get coffee. Maybe there's some bands out there that exist where they don't have to drink coffee. That sounds nice. But, like every single one of us needs to either, hit up a coffee house somewhere or hit up a gas station, get some coffee or however you need to do it. Right. And then you learn that. And I think that's the main difference in like personalities without going into too much detail is like learning everyone's kind of thing. Like, don't step on, so-and-so's toes about this and make sure they get that and everyone's good, And it can be hard to manage that with 5 people because everyone can have different, ideas of what they want the day to look like. As far as what keeps me grounded, I would say I've tried a lot of different things. I went through a period where I was meditating a lot. Mike in Destroyer of Light did some meditation as well. I think at a certain level, I'm not going to say it's like an actual meditative state, but I hit a certain just chill mindset. And I think it's almost just from like exposure to tour is like I spent a lot of years having like serious anxiety on tour a lot of the time or being like kind of just always kind of worried about how things were going to go or about what could go wrong. And after just years of doing it, a lot of that went away. And a lot of the familiarity with tour, I think, keeps me grounded. Other than that, it's finding like a hobby during the day so you don't go crazy in the van. I've got my books. I play chess now is a thing I'm into. And it's just sort of keeping yourself occupied and focused. And then for me, like kind of the broader thing, the bird's eye view is like really just accepting the uncertainty of tour, I think is really where I got to over the years and kind of learning to appreciate it. And maybe as another anecdote, when the first tour that we did to kind of hit back into the swing of things after the pandemic, our van died. Like we had that whole issue with the oil basically leaking out of it. And it was bone dry when we were going up a mountain outside of Ashland, Oregon, and that seized up and died. And that took out like 2 of the most like exciting shows of the tour we missed. We had spent the night in this tiny little hippie granola town and finished the rest of that tour in a U-Haul box truck. And I had the time of my life. And I don't know how I would have felt if I was like around 2016 era Keegan, when I was like really struggling with mental health. I think that would have I don't know how I would have reacted. I might have like bottled up inside myself. But at a certain point, after the pandemic and after not doing it for so many years and realizing this is a real privilege and this is an adventure and it's really kind of fun, there was something about that was like, yeah, man, fuck it. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, we're out here. We can either mope about it or we can have fun. And so, yeah, I think I just hit that stride,
That's great. Plus, the guy in Denver gave us a bunch of mushrooms. That was always a good thing to get us through that night.
Yeah, that's that night where we both had a bottle of wine and that big cup of mushrooms.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a fun night in that little town. And I now that I'm kind of in the philosophy world, I guess there's a college in Ashland. I've met a couple people who have like lived there, and it's a cool little town. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I enjoyed going through that town, except that bar turned into a cock bar afterwards, or a meat market.
Right. But, yeah. Well, it was like an Irish
cool
pub in a small town, on Friday nights. Yeah. So, yeah.
Is there something that when you're on tour that you look for, like on the quest for, like food or drinks or like some antique thing, or like is there something that you look for when you go to a certain city?
I like nature. I like parks. I like, I enjoy if we're on a long drive and it's an area where they have like rest areas that are like kind of up in the woods or in the mountains. I'll totally be the person to be like, hey, let's stop here for like 20, 30 minutes and just chill. Like, yeah, everyone go to the bathroom. We don't need to like hurry, pile in the van. If we're not like in a super big hurry, I love that kind of thing. Just like take off my shoes for a little bit, walk around under the trees. Or I remember sometimes where it's like, yeah, we get to a city, venue is not open for another 4 hours. We have nowhere to be. We don't know anyone there. Just go hang out at the park for a couple hours. And that's I really much enjoy that about touring is kind of like I remember still like days we spent at the park in like San Francisco and like Savannah, Georgia and stuff, like that are just random
Yeah.
places where nothing really much happened, but it was just kind of like a cool island of peace in the middle of the chaos of touring. But yeah.
Yeah, it gives you the break of the stop, hurry up and go kind of thing. You get to like just enjoy being in the area you're at before
Yeah, for
the
sure.
show.
For sure. And it's also you're in cities so much of the time, or you're just driving on the highway, and it's nice to not be in a vehicle, take a step out, and you're not necessarily in the like urban city environment to kind of just reconnect with nature. I mean, I guess I could bring it up as well, like playing at Shadow Woods out in the woods 2 times. Still one of my favorite festivals I've ever played. Both times.
Yeah.
It was great. And a lot of the appeal of that was that you're away from the city and just under this canopy of trees, and hanging out with like 300 other metalheads, and just camping and enjoying nature. And then you wake up and all day there's awesome bands. I mean, I love that, and so any chance. I mean, another place we went, I remember was like Mount Auburn, like cemetery in
Yeah.
Boston, and you could spend like a whole day there. It's
That place was cool.
yeah, and there's kind of like a tower at the center of it, like the highest hill. You can kind of get a panoramic view of the city, and just graves and mausoleums and just tombstones from like the 1700s, 1800s. It's a very cool place. So any place to like decompress like that, that's kind of where my go-to on tour.
All right. What is your tour snack of choice? What is something that you always gravitate towards whenever you stop?
So nowadays I go with like I always get like those Chobani yogurt drinks at the gas
Oh yeah.
station. You just put one of those down, it just to help your stomach basically. Because you always need any help you can get. Uh, Tour snack. I probably have eaten too many hot fries in my life. I'll say that. Another thing is um, QT, Quick Trip. That's
Oh
kind of the
yeah.
place I recommend to everybody now who's touring or on the road. Because unless you're on the East Coast and you have like Sheetz and Wawa, most of the country doesn't have that. But QT is like the closest thing. And, their sandwiches are better than Subway or, most chains like that. And it's just super convenient. So that's kind of become the go-to now. And it's funny because like bands will come through and be like, "Oh, we got to stop at the Buc-ee's." It's like, "Nah, dude, Buc-ee's is I'm not gonna say it sucks, but it's like it's overhyped. Like Buc-ee's is God's gift to like gas stations or something. I would definitely prefer QT any day of the week. That's my hot take. That's my controversial opinion.
Not that. No, Adam Neal and I were talking about Buc-ee's in the last episode. It's like
Oh,
it's,
okay, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's like it's something it's a spectacle you gotta see, but it is like a tourist trap. It's like it's as America as you can get.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, dude. I think a lot of Europeans, if you were to tell them about Buc-ee's, might not even believe that it's like they would think you're making fun of America, like that's not real. Like they wouldn't have like a I guess such an excessive gas station. But yeah, like no, like I definitely don't. I'll take Buc-ee's over like just the Shell station or whatever. But that's you got to optimize. The thing is, like if you're trying to make some good time on tour,
yeah,
Buc-ee's, it's kind of like it's like a whole thing you got to do.
it's almost
Like,
like Buc-ee's you got to do when you don't have something else really to
dude,
do.
there's
That
always one bandmate who's just like everyone else is out of the Buc-ee's and somebody's lost wandering around.
yeah,
Like you can lose people in there. So it's a little bit dangerous.
yeah. Do you have a favorite city that you like to
Uh,
play in?
I like to, well, to play in, man. recently I've had a lot of fun in Tulsa and in Fayetteville, and they're like kind of 2 hours apart, but the scenes there are amazing and really supportive. As far as like just one of my favorite cities that I discovered through touring is probably Pittsburgh. I love the old buildings there, the fact it's on all these hills. I like the bridges and just like the way that the city looks next to the river, and I don't know, it's just got a cool vibe to it. Totally different from Philadelphia. Uh it's not really, I don't know, it's funny because it's not really, doesn't feel like a Midwestern town so much, but it doesn't feel like an East Coast town. It's kind of like between the two. You can see there's people with some attitude, but they're also super friendly. And it's
Mm-hmm.
got kind of the diversity there as well. And it's just very scenic and historic. And I never had heard anyone talk about Pittsburgh and say that was a cool city until I had been there. And so, I guess I'm ruining it. I'm spoiling it. But, Pittsburgh is a pretty cool place.
Very gothic. It's a very
Very
gothic city.
gothic, yeah. Especially like the downtown on, old cathedrals and stuff. Yeah, like it is.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, a little bit about you. You have your own podcast, the Nichi podcast. People that might be listening in, you want to tell them a little bit about your podcast?
Sure, yeah. So I started that. It was a pandemic project, I guess. We were writing and recording albums during the pandemic, but it was just, a lot of time at home, and we weren't playing shows. We didn't have tours. I had more time, and it kind of opened up that opportunity maybe to do something like that I'd never really considered that I had the time for before. And it started kind of almost from just online. I had been part of like some book clubs talking about Nietzsche's books. And I mean, that all goes back to tour as well. I mean, I would read philosophy books on tour. That was how I mostly got my education in philosophy, really, was spending 8 hours, driving through the middle of nowhere, where you just read a book is what you have to do. And then Jeff, one of our old bassists, and Nick, the bass player after that, they both were into philosophy, and they would bring their books too, and we'd kind of talk about it. Me and Jeff would like trade books. And so, that was kind of, I was a philosophy major before I dropped out, but it was really where I kind of rediscovered it and had the time to really delve deeply into this, because all you have is time, for a lot of the tour experience. And so then I kind of feel like, so that, was the preparation for, I came to know Nietzsche's philosophy really well. And I joined some, online book club during the pandemic, and people were all saying, you explain this really well. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And so I decided I'll try my hand at that. And it's been going for about, I guess, 4 years now, since 2021. I didn't really talk about it in the doom metal community or the broader metal community too much, because I was like, who cares about this? I didn't want to be that guy who's like, hey, I've got a podcast. But it mainly because
Like
it had
me.
nothing to do with, well, see, I realized that as I said that, but your podcast actually has
It's
to do
okay.
with your music. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
it's
Like,
true. I'm just messing around.
and it has to do with the fact of like, you're actually talking to, like a different guest and everything. This was literally just me, like sitting in my room, like recording stuff about philosophy. And I'm like, I'm not gonna like push this on people who, my nerdy niche little thing that I'm doing,
Yeah.
It's turned out that actually there are people in the metal community who do listen to the podcast and do enjoy it very much. Like a guy that we just ran into the last time we played, Brian, he was like, hey, you do that Nietzsche podcast. And this is a guy I've seen at our shows like 6 or 7 times. And he's just discovered this now. Like, and he said he'd actually heard it before and never put it together that was me. So like, there's been weird coincidences like that. And people came out a couple times when we were touring, like on the East Coast, to see the band, but they were there because like they listened to the podcast. So that was like really bizarre too. So I found there's like more overlap than I thought. I kind of thought these would be separate worlds. But it turns out a lot of metalheads are into philosophy, and a lot of philosophy nerds like metal. So, I guess that was the wrong approach. I'm now I do talk about it. Now I do cross promote,
Yeah.
I've done even kind of episodes just talking about the band and music, and not like formal episodes, but I've done some where I'm just talking about my life and stories from the past and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting ride. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm still going strong on it. And it's turned out there's a real interest for this, so I'm going to keep going.
Here's something you might enjoy. David Diaz came to our show in San Antonio, and he told me that a girl that he shot in Austin is from New York, but she found out about him through your podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you had. I think you had shared a picture that he had taken and mentioned his name, and she hit him up and was like, I'm coming to Austin. Can you come shoot photos of me?
Oh, wow. Damn. I should get a referral fee for that, David.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you should hit up David and tell him that he owes you a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, guy. I want my 10% finder's fee. No, that's great. That's cool. Well, and our sound engineer, the guy that we worked with on the Destroyer records, Matt Melly, he was telling me, he was, he's like, I listened to stuff about psychology, and I had done some videos about Carl Jung, and he said it was just auto playing. He was kind of listening to podcasts while it went to sleep, and then the earbud, he hears this voice, and he's like, I know that voice. And then he realized it was me. And he's like, I ripped it out, because he was like, it was weird because you were like serenading me to sleep, and I like know you on a personal level. But that started to happen too, where people have just kind of stumbled across what I'm doing now. So yeah, like I said, it's been an interesting ride. When it started, I didn't even think it would be anything like on this level. I didn't imagine I'd be doing it 4 years later. I wasn't even really thinking about that. It was kind of a thing to pass the time until we could go on tour again and go be musicians again. And now it's my job. It's a very weird thing.
It's weird how shit plays out sometimes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I don't know. Part of it being, the main thing that I'm doing now is that it is not as fun as it used to be, because, it's like anything that becomes work. It's not that it's not fun, but suddenly you have this kind of thing, this need to be productive, this necessity to be productive that's kind of associated with it. And so, and really it's the same thing with music too, it's all fun and games to just book local shows and be kind of a local band. Once you start booking a tour, right, the stress involved in that makes it's still incredibly fun. It's still, in my view, the best thing in life when you're out doing it. But like the business side of it and actually trying to like chase that down. And once you start booking a tour, I think the scariest part of booking a tour is probably when you get the first booking, or like when the first actually confirm, because then you're like, all right, I have to make this whole route work now.
Well,
I'm committed.
That's the other question I wanted to ask, is like, now you are me and your band. So now you
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry for all the shit I talked over the years, all the complaining I did. No, I mean, I've said that to you before, I think, just personally, of like, dude,
no, yeah, I know,
I really get it. Yeah, like, well, I think I actually pulled you, so I was like, dude, thank you. Now I see exactly what a pain this really is.
Yeah, especially when you're like a underground band and you're just trying to make something of it,
Yeah, well, it's, anything you're doing where the main thing is just waiting on other people, it can be really frustrating. Like, you're on a ticking timer, and your whole thing is basically reaching out to people, sending emails. I would say a solid 75% of which will never be answered at all.
Yeah.
And then it's almost harder when people do get back to you and say, I'll help you out, and then you don't hear from them for a week or 2 weeks. And I've learned This is one of the things I've learned trying to book tours. And this will be my message to people, promoters out there and local bands who want to help out a touring band, anybody.
Listen
I
up.
love it when people tell me no. I love when I get an email back and they say, I can't do that. I don't have the date, or I don't have the time. I can't help you out. I would far prefer that to either not answering the email or jacking me around for 2 weeks saying you're going to help me and then you don't. Like, just tell me no. Like, and I'll move on to the next thing so fast, and there's no hard feelings at all. So that's my message, is like, don't be afraid to tell musicians no if you can't do it, or if you don't even need to, like, I don't know if I have time for this, maybe just tell them no and let them move
Yeah.
on to the next thing. For sure.
It definitely is a good message. I mean, all it takes is a simple no. You don't even have to say anything else. Just no.
Sure. Yeah, and usually, I mean, the really nice ones, like, you know, I've hit up some local bands who have actually given me a whole list of bands and venues to hit up. Of like, here's all the active bands I know, or like one band in Seattle. I'll give them a name drop called Land of Wolves. They couldn't play the show, but they're like, here's a list of bands that we suggest, and here is a list of venues for the other date that you said you're trying to book in like 3 different cities around the area. They gave me like 12 venues or something, and that was so helpful. So you don't have to go above and beyond like that, but even that is like, that's a huge like thing that helps people out a lot. And another band over in South Carolina just did something similar with Kelsey when she was reaching out to them. It gave her a huge list of venues to hit up as well. I think it was the Doomsday Prophet guys. They were super helpful.
Oh yeah,
and so, yeah, like that's the real homie thing to do if you can't help out. So I'm not saying to hold everyone to that standard, but you know, yeah, like that would be the thing. Is like, just tell people no. Don't be afraid to. And if you really want to help them out at that point, like, just, yeah, throw them the direction of where to go. And that would be my main thing, to just like anyone who wants to help out like touring bands, especially like if you're like a local band or if you want to go on tour, that's how you really help out as well. You know, like point people in the right direction. And because it's a lot harder to book a show when you're not in the city you're trying to book. I know it's an obvious statement, but yeah.
Well, yeah, ultimately we're all a community, and we're all should help pool resources to make people's lives easier. I mean, that's okay. How about this? We've talked about this many times throughout the years. 90s action movies are the pinnacle of cinema. So but like top 3 90s action movies of all time.
Wow. Okay. I'll say, I mean, does Big Trouble count? No, that's 87. God damn it. Okay. 90s action movies. Okay. I'll go with Die Hard 2. That's the underrated one. Underrated
Ice
one.
pick in the eye, man. That's
also a Christmas movie, by the way. Next Christmas, check out Die Hard 2. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I think I've seen that. It's been a long time. Dude, it's got William Sadler in it. He crashes a plane. He incinerates Colm Meaney, the pilot, and fucking all, you know. There's there's some crazy scenes in Die Hard 2. It's actually a really good movie. I'm trying to think of what else in the 90s. I mean, Face Off.
I was going to say, if you didn't mention Face Off, I was going to be upset because
right, and which means I can't go with Con Air because that's enough like Cage cheesiness.
You can't have two Cage movies as top 3.
No, I don't think you can. Man, I'll go with like Starship Troopers. I'll say Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. That's one that I think's like actually a cult classic now.
Mm-hmm.
But like people didn't know where to place it when it came out.
Yeah, well, because it's like it's a satire of like authoritarian, like war-based regimes. But the reason why people don't get it is because it's not that the movie's like, this is the thing. So people, I think, will even misinterpret it, even if they know it's like a satire that's making fun of fascism. They're like, but it doesn't really make fun of them. Like the main characters are awesome and the bugs are bad. It's like, Yeah, that's not the point. The point is, this is the movie they would make. Like, if you were living in this regime, this is what their movies would be like. And it's still like a really poignant movie in a lot of ways. Really, not even to me, I just take it. I love movies like that deconstruct the genre and deconstruct cinema. And it's funny because when you watch that movie, it is like the characters are almost like intentionally airheaded and like make, Rico is totally should not be going after Carmen. Like he has a woman that loves him, but he wants this kind of brain dead woman who doesn't love him, right? Uh, and you can see how like by the end of the movie, all of his like character's been drained out of him, and he's just sort of this mindless killing machine. And so there is like that subtle criticism in there, but I take it as like almost a criticism of, I guess, a lot of action movies in that way, but that's why I like it. I like Paul Verhoeven, and yeah, that'll be my pick. I dig it.
Those are good choices.
Brandon, you do some deep cuts, not just the same ones,
Yeah, I know. It's like you said, it's easy to pick two Nicolas Cage movies, like but Con Air and Face Off. Like, if you had to pick one, I'd probably go Face Off myself.
Yeah, Con Air is basically a comedy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, Face Off is comedic as well, but
yeah. You actually left out a gem though, Congo.
Well, I don't even know what genre that's in, dude. That's like where we're trying to get people who saw Jurassic Park to pick up this video at Blockbuster is why Congo was made.
Let's get actors that have terrible accents for their characters.
Oh man, Ernie Hudson's wandering accent in that movie. That's great.
Is there a bathroom that you remember on tour? A bathroom.
Okay, so the one I remember, it wasn't actually because the actual bathroom was that disgusting. Because anyone who's stayed in a lot of musicians' houses on tour, the kind of bathroom I'm talking about. There's just kind of like grime and hair all over everything, and just no counter space. There's a bunch of gunk everywhere, and the floor like just like looks like there's mold around. It just looks questionable. Everything's like kind of, So this particular bathroom didn't rise above that level in any of these ways, except that. So I remember we played a show in Nashville. We stayed at this disgusting house. This is when we were touring with Widower. I remember like 3 or 4 of us saw that house and didn't even get out of the fucking van. They're like, because we had the bench seats, so they just slept in there. And I remember, I woke up, I peeled my face off the floor. I had like dog hair and dirt and crumbs on my face. And it was just like, I was like, God, this house is fucking gross, but I'm going to take a shower and just clean myself off. I walked into that restroom. I think I walked in. That's what it was. I walked in, went to go to the bathroom, and then I was like, I'm going to go get my stuff to shower. I should check the shower really quick. And I pulled open the curtain, and it was like a wall of like black mold. It wasn't even a wall. Like it had actually like eaten away some of the wall. Or maybe there was just a pre-existing hole in the drywall. I don't fucking know. But there's a giant fucking hole, and it's covered in like black mold, like a fuzzy, I don't know what, man. Like, like the side of an old like castle that has like fuzzy green mold on it, but it's black mold and it's on bathroom tile, and it was just fucking covered. I don't know when the last time this bathroom was used. And I was also like realizing like, oh man, I've been like, breathing this in this house all night also, everyone who lives here. So that was probably the grossest, was that discovery. I just like shut the shower curtain and went back to sleep, I think. It's kind of like, yeah, you ain't showering today, buddy.
Yep, that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I appreciate you being on this podcast, man. I appreciate you copping
This has been a lot of fun, man. Yeah, for all the stories we tell, there's still a million, feels like that
Well, I
are
mean,
still there. And so it's,
me and
yeah,
me and
it's
you
a lot of
could
fun.
probably me and you could probably talk for like 3 hours, 5 hours about all the shit that we went through.
For sure. Yeah. It's, again, yeah, there's a lot of stories and a lot of, like little insights and stuff. And it's just, that's why it's cool that you're doing this, man, because I'm sure you'll get to talk to a lot of people where everyone has a
Yeah,
wealth of knowledge and info like that.
that's kind of what my whole point, my whole theory was, is like get everyone's insight and experience, and also at the same time, if people have stuff that they're promoting, promote that as well. So it's uh it's fun. It's fun to do. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, do you have any last statements that you'd like to say?
No. Have a good time all the time, to quote Spinal Tap. That'll be
I
it.
like it. All right, thanks, man.
For sure. My pleasure.